When it comes to Jira software, one of the topics that's often overlooked is basic navigation and usage. So in this video series, we're going to cover those topics. So let's go ahead and jump in with basic navigation. Here you can see when I open Jira, I'm automatically on a sprint board for one of my projects. When you open Jira and you log in, you could be at a variety of different places, but this is where we're going to start. If you're not currently on a sprint board for your project, what you can do is on the navigation bar at the top, you can go to the projects dropdown and you can select the project that you're looking for. If you don't find it here in your recent or your starred, you can view all projects and you can find the project that you are looking for. When it comes to projects, you can either favorite them on your recent, so you can star them here at the top and they will always be pinned, or you can go to view all projects, find your project, and then star it from that view that we were just on. So when it comes to basic navigation, first you can see the nav bar here up at the top. You have your work, so what's assigned to me, what have I recently worked on, what boards am I part of, what queues and what alerts do you have set, and you can go to your work page. If you hit this drop down, you can see the projects that you've recently viewed and or starred. You have filters. So here you can access the filters that you've created, or you can view all filters and create filters from here, or you can view all issues from here, and we'll go into that more in depth in a later video. You have dashboards, so you can access any dashboards that you've created. Again, we'll go into dashboards at a later video. You have teams, so you can access what teams you have available in Jira. You also have plans, right? So if you have your roadmaps, that's where you can access that. You have assets and you have apps drop down. So if you do have any additional applications installed and integrated with Jira, this is where you'll be able to find them and access them. Here on the nav bar, you also have this create button. So if I wanted to create an issue within this project, I can hit create and the create screen pops up so long as you have the proper permissions to be able to create something in this project, and you can go ahead and create that issue from this view. So that's the navigation bar. You can also search for something. So if you're looking for a specific key or you want to type something in, you can actually also use this search functionality. This bell icon is where you can access your notifications in Jira. You have the help icon, and you also have settings where you can access certain settings for things depending on what your permissions are. And here's where you can access your personal Jira settings as well. And then you have, of course, your profile and your account. That's everything that's on the navigation bar. When you scroll over to the left, you may not have this currently toggled, this widget on the left-hand side, so you may just see your sprint board or whatever board you're on. You can select and expand this widget on the left-hand side so that you can see these different things that populate. There are a few things that populate here. One is the sprint board that you're currently on. If you do want to navigate to another board, you can hit that drop down and it'll populate here. You can hit this drop down for the sprint board and all the different boards will populate here. You can search for a board that you're looking for, or you can create a new board. Again, we'll go into that into more depth on another video, but that's basically how you navigate to your board. The other way that you can navigate to your default board for your project is by going to active sprint. So if you are looking for a sprint that is active, you can hit that active sprint button and it will populate you on this particular page. The other view that you have is timeline. So let's go ahead and hit timeline. And this is where you can build out a timeline or a plan or a roadmap for your particular project. In this view, you can have your timeline drop down by epic. You can have something set by sprints. So here you can see with the epic, you have this drop down. The way that you set and use the timeline is you click on when you want a task to start. So when I want this epic to start, and then you can click, hold, and drag to when you want that task to end. You can do this and you can set this. You can change the view settings on the timeline as well. And so let's see here, you can show completed tasks or you can hide those completed tasks and you just choose to let that and toggle them on. You also show completed for things that have been completed within the last 12 months, 9 months, 6 months, so on and so forth. The other thing that you can do is you can also change the view. So right now you can see October, November, December. Maybe I want my view to be in weeks. So now you can see that this timeline view looks so much different because it's broken down by weeks rather than months. And so this gives you a little bit more of a granular view if your timeline is shorter, or if you just want to focus on the few tasks at hand over the next month or so. Going back to the widget on the left-hand side, we also have backlog. So if you select the backlog, this will take you to the project backlog. This has a number of different view functionalities. Here you can see that I have a couple of sprints created. I have the Dev 2 sprint 1, which is currently active, and then I have a second sprint here created. If you wanted to create a third sprint because you're planning in advance, or you just needed to create another sprint, you scroll down and you select this create sprint button that is just above the backlog, and the backlog contains all of the issues that have not yet been worked on. It can contain issues that are in progress. It will not contain anything that's closed out or considered done, but this is where you access the backlog. So again, if you want to create a new sprint, you can hit that create sprint button. It automatically names the sprints based off of what your previous sprints are named. But if you did want to edit the details in this, you can go ahead and hit that ellipsis icon in the top right hand corner, click edit sprint. What this will do is it'll allow you to edit the name of the sprint. So we can say, Dev 2 sprint 3, maybe we're okay with it. We want the sprint to last 1 week. You can customize it to be whatever length you want. So let's say we want this to go from today, October 9th, to, let's see here, from October 9th to October 18th. You can select that. Here's where you can enter the sprint goal, or if you want it to just be 1 week, it'll auto-populate the end date based on the start date that you enter for that 1 week duration, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 week duration, for whatever length you want your sprints to be. So you can enter your sprint goal, and you can hit update, and now you can see that Dev 2 Sprint 3 is now through October 9th through October 16th because we selected that 1 week. And so this is the backlog view. Your backlog may look different initially. There are some different view settings that you can select. So here you can see view settings. You can elect to see a version panel. And here you can see that the versions pop up. This is if you are tracking versions and version control within your projects. You may not be, in which case you can exit out of that and toggle that off. The other item is the Epic panel. I like using the Epic panel because these are the different features that I may be working on, or the different milestones within my project that need to be completed, and I'll highlight those on my timeline. So I do like having the Epic panel toggled as to on. And then you can also enable quick filters. So if you have quick filters available on your board, and we'll go into quick filters in more depth in a later video along with JQL, which is Jira query language. So you can also select to have those quick filters here available on your backlog as well. As far as density goes, you can have the default. You can also select compact. And so this just really makes sure you're able to see as many things as you possibly can, and really shortens those spaces here. So here you can see here's the default, and here's compact. And then here with fields, you can select what fields you want to see. So you can see the issue type, the issue key, the summary, right? Let's see, the epic that it's underneath, as well as the status. You can list story points and priority and assignee. These are all the different fields I have selected. You can toggle any of these off that you do not want. So for example, if I don't want version, I can deselect that, and version will no longer populate and show on the backlog view. So that's how you can alter your view settings on your backlog. The other way that you can alter those view settings is, again, through this drop down. You can select which epic you want to view, or you can hide that epic panel altogether. So again, that's toggling that off. So I don't want to see the epics, or if you do want to see them, you can select that. You can do the same thing with version or issue types or those quick filters as well. The other thing that you can do, and what I think is nice, is let's say I only wanted to see the issues that were underneath feature 1. What I can do with this Epic panel is I can select and click that feature 1, and now you can see I only see tasks associated with feature 1 on any of the sprints as well as the backlog. Now let's say I wanted to view tasks that were in the Epic test epic as well as feature 1. I can go ahead and select this epic and this epic, and now you can see I can see all the tasks that are underneath either Epic test or feature 1. Again, in the backlog or in any of the active sprints that are showing on the backlog view. And so that's one way that I think using the Epic panel is very handy and very useful. coming back over to the widget on the left-hand side, some other things that you'll see, again, you can access active sprints. What this will do is it'll take you back to your current active sprint and the default board for your project. There's this new feature with calendar view. This is if you have issues that are scheduled and you have sprints that are scheduled or outlined on your timeline, it will give you that calendar view and give you an idea of when things will be active. The other thing that you have is this reports button on the left-hand widget. This is where you're going to access all your previous sprint reports and your sprint reports in general. There are a variety of different boards that you can use. You have a burn down chart. You can look at this based on total work remaining in the project. You have a burn up chart. You have a sprint report, and as well as a number of other reports that exist to be able to analyze some of the things that are going on in your project, as well as with your. Each report has a description where you can read a little bit more about the chart, how to use it, as well as what its intended purpose is. Here is where you're going to access the sprint reports. I really like sprint reports. This is when you're going to conduct your sprint reviews. If you do use sprints and you are doing sprint reviews, I think this is helpful. It really just outlines what was completed, what wasn't completed. Are we meeting our projected goal or are we not? For this, because it's active, you can see the issues that were not completed within the sprint are listed here. So none of these have been completed yet. And then issues that were removed from the sprint are listed here. So it'll show you things not completed. It'll show you what you did complete. And it's just a really nice view to be able to have a conversation with your team and say, well, I know that this issue wasn't completed within the sprint that we had originally intended on completing. Is that because it was more complicated and complex than we initially thought? And really just have some conversations about sprint reviews and how we can learn about estimating the work in a particular task. And so that's the reports portion of the left-hand widget. Here you can see once you click into reports, it does show you a variety of other reports that you can access from this left-hand widget. But let's go ahead and go back to the project, and that was under reports. Now let's say you want to review all the issues in this project, but in a list view. That's what this is right here. So you can select list, and this will populate and will look very similar to a spreadsheet. So here you can see this is the list view for everything that is within this Dev2 project. So it shows the issue type. It shows if there are stories underneath it, right? So you can break that down. You can see the stories underneath it, and you can see the child stories underneath any stories as well, or tasks as well. So it really just breaks down that hierarchy. So you can access your issues from this list view. You can select which ones you want to view. So you have type, you have key, you have the summary, you can view the status, you can see what sprint it's in, assignee, priority, labels, created, updated, reporter, and have a variety of different fields here. You can select filters, so you can filter down on some of this information, right? So what's assigned to me, what's an active sprint, maybe you have a start date and a due date that you want to filter by, or you want to filter by assignee. The other thing you can do is you can group, so you can group things by status, by sprint, by assignee, by priority, or by story points. So there is some filter functionality. You can view this as a chart, or you can hit more. You can select to hide done items or expand on all items. And here you can see you viewed this list as a chart. You can select the data you want to view it by. So let's say we want to view this by issue type. Here you can see it pulls up this nice chart where you can see that I have 10 stories. Release, I have one issue type called development, one issue type called QA. I have 5 tasks open, I have 5 epics open, and again, I have 10 stories open for a total of 23 issues within this project. Yours will likely look a lot different. This is just my demo project, so it makes sense that this data kind of looks a little wonky. So that's the list view. You can also filter by assignee, and that's what these little bubble icons are in the top here. So if ever you're in a view and you see those little bubble icons, you can select who you want to view as the assignee, and it'll automatically pull anything that's assigned to that user. And so again, that's just a nice way of filtering. You can deselect to see the whole view again. Here, if you go to issues, this is going to be another similar view to list. This is where you can actually use the Jira query language to filter on your searches. And there are a few different things that you can do within this view. One is you can either have a list view or a detailed view. When you first log into Jira, you're probably going to have the detailed view, and you're probably going to be selected under basic. What the detailed view does is it puts all of the issues here on the left-hand side. It gives you a more detailed, hence detailed view of the issue that you're currently selected, and you can toggle between different issues and view those details within those issues, right? So that's detailed view. I actually really primarily use list view. I find it helpful to be able to filter on all the different things that I need and create the filters that I'm looking for. So here, if I want project equals dev 2, so issues that are in this project, I can say and priority equals high. Once I hit enter, now it says no issues were found matching your search because I must not have any issues where priority equals high. So let's try priority equals medium. Now you can see I have things and issues popped up where the priority equals medium. So anything that is in this Dev 2 project, any issues that are in this Dev 2 project that have a priority of medium are going to populate on this list view. And that's a big reason why I like this list view and why I like the JQL view as well. Once you've entered your query, you can save that filter, and then that filters drop down is where that comes in. So you can save a view that you want to reference over and over again as a filter, and then you can just go to that filter and see what information is populating there. Or you can have that filter tied to a gadget on a dashboard and view metrics that way. And we'll get into that in another video, but for now, this is just basic navigation. So anytime you log into Jira and you're using it for the first time, I highly recommend going to issues, and then under here, definitely select list view, not detailed view. Again, I prefer list view. It's just very helpful. The other thing is, if you're not an expert on JQL, you can select this basic view, and then you can hit these drop downs, which make it a little bit more user-friendly. This is just something that Jira has recently added to their user interface. But for those of you that are looking to be more granular and are aware of JQL, I always recommend brushing up on your JQL. It just helps you to be able to really narrow down and find exactly what you're looking for. Here, if you are on premium, they do offer AI now. So if you select AI, you can use AI to find issues faster. So instead of entering queries, it says just start typing. The more detailed view you give us, the more accurate the search results will be. And so you can use AI to help find issues. So for example, it says which epics are in project, right? Stories in Dev 2 updated this month. And so they have this additional AI filter that can help you find exactly what you're looking for. So again, that's something newer that they've rolled out. The other thing is when you select issues, it does give you these default filters. So you can look at all issues, my open issues, so anything that's assigned to you that's open. You can search for anything where you're the reporter, or just open issues or done issues, viewed recently, resolved recently, and updated recently. Here at the bottom, you'll also see any filters that you have starred, and you can view all filters as well if you have those filters saved. So that's under the issues. So again, when you first log into Jira, come to issues and just select that list view. It'll just make your life a lot easier for the most part, unless you really do like the detailed view. But again, from what I found, list view has been helpful. Here, if you scroll down, these are development features, so you can list components that are part of your, releases and development that you want to track, as well as any releases that you want to track too. Here you can access project pages. So if you have maybe Confluence and you have a Confluence space for this project, this is where that Confluence space will be tied to the project. So if you're not sure how to access the Confluence page for a project that you're working on, you can log into Jira and under project pages, it should be linked there. If it's not, make sure to ask your project admin to go ahead and link it there, again, if you do use Confluence. This other section here is to add a shortcut. So let's say you have a Google folder that you use instead for your project documentation, or a SharePoint site that you use for your project documentation, you can get that URL for that SharePoint site or for that Google shared file and shared folder, and you can add a shortcut under here and then be able to access it. So same thing here, you can just access it from two different toggles. One is for Atlassian products and associated Atlassian products, and one is for any other URL that you want to associate with this. Here on the very bottom left-hand corner, you see something that says project settings. You will only see project settings if you are a project admin. And so you need to have permissions to be a project admin to have project settings. So if you go to project settings, one, you have to be very careful. Most individuals that have project settings only use it to be able to add people to the project. So if you want to add additional users and assign those user roles, that's a majority reason why people are granted project admin access, is to be able to add other users and then grant users different roles. The way that you'll grant users roles, first you can add people. So you can add people to the project by clicking this button, entering their email address and adding them. They do need to have a Jira account already in order for you to add them. And when you want to assign roles, make sure you understand the roles that are available within your organization and make sure that you're selecting the right one. If you don't select the right one, then your permissions and that user may not be able to use Jira and your project the way that they should. So really make sure that if you are a project admin, you understand the permissions that are associated with the different roles in your project. The other thing that exists here is you have project details, project summary, you have permissions and notifications, you have automations and features and toolchain and workflows. The thing about all of these other aspects of being a project admin, if you alter the permission scheme, if you alter the workflow that's associated with this project, if you add some automation, if you alter the notification scheme that's associated with this project by clicking into those, you could really mess up your entire project and your Jira configuration. So essentially, you could take your team down if you don't know what you're doing as a project admin. So if you've been trained on it, that's fantastic. You should know what you can do, what you can't do. If you haven't been trained on it and you've been granted project admin access so that you can add people to the project and assign them roles, then just make sure you don't go in and mess with any of these other features, because it can have a lot of negative consequences for you and your teams and be very disruptive to gathering metrics and to just doing your work and finding your work in general. So if you haven't been trained on it, my rule of advice is just don't mess with it. The other thing here is if you are a project admin, you can go to details. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's the details for the project, right? So you have the project name and you have the project key. The thing about the project name and the project key is once that project name and that project key is set up, do not alter the name or the project key. It's possible to, but I absolutely do not recommend updating the name or the project key after the project has been created and you've been using the project, because if you have any filters, if anyone has any filters set up where they are saying project equals this name or project key equals, dev2, right? Or any issues that filter off of the project key or the name, if you change that, it'll break all of those filters. That means your reports will go down. That means your, issues and your filters are going to go down and they're not going to work, and they all need to be updated manually. And that's a really big pain, and again, can be really disruptive. So if you have access to be a project admin, and if you have access to project settings, don't mess with the details, specifically the project name or the project key. The other thing you can do is you can list a URL. So let's say you're building a website, right? You can list the URL to the website for that project and you can just plop it in there. The other thing you can do is you can choose a project category. So if you have categories, like maybe an implementation category, maybe you have different products that you support and you have different categories for those products that you configure and support for any potential clients, then you can select that category here. And this is also where you can access creating categories. So you category and manage categories. You may need certain access to manage categories. So if categories don't exist and you don't see that drop down, or it says you don't have access to it, then definitely contact your product site admin and your org admin to get those categories added if you think they'll be useful. Here you can see you can enter a description of the project. So with this project, I put in this project was created to serve as a template for all future development projects in the development category. So I do intend to create a category for development projects, and then this project will be used as a template and will be shared, and will share all of its settings for any other development projects. So again, you can alter that information that's in here. You can enter the project lead, and you can also enter a default assignee. And so those are the details. So again, if you do have project settings available to you, that means you are a project admin. And it's likely because you need the ability to add people to your project and assign them roles and grant them permissions by assigning them roles to your project. So if you have been trained on all the other aspects of being a project admin, then you should know what you can and can't do and what the potential repercussions of some action items are. If you haven't been, then again, just stick to the people's portion and just add people and assign roles as you need. So coming back to our board, the other thing that you can do is when you are on a board, you can click, hold, and drag issues to different columns. And this is how you can update some statuses. And so here you can see, depending on how your workflow is set up, you may or may not be able to move a certain task to a certain status. So if I move this to on hold, you can see here that I'm not allowed to move this to done because our workflow doesn't go that way. So I have to move it back in progress if I'm ready to move it on hold. And then from in progress, I can move it to on hold or done. It just depends on how your workflows and your projects are set up within your company and your organization. I usually default to having global transitions. This isn't always the case in organizations, and global transitions basically mean you can move it from done to do or done to in progress or done to on hold. You can move it from any status to any status. So from anything to anything. I'm a big fan of global transitions just because it streamlines the process, but if you are being audited about following a specific process in a certain order, this is just a way to make sure that your team has to actually follow through those processes and making sure that those tasks and those pieces of work are going through the workflow that they need to go through. And so here you can see, again, if you do mark that as done, sometimes you need to be prompted for certain information. So this is requiring me to prompt for a resolution. So we'll just consider this done, and we'll move the issue to done. And now you can see that that issue has dropped off of this backlog. And again, that's because of how I have it configured. So anything that is marked as done will just drop off. All right. So now you're aware of everything that's on the nav bar, as well as this left-hand widget and the different toggles, as well as if you have that project settings icon, what you should and shouldn't do with it, depending on what your level of training and knowledge is. So I hope this was helpful for basic Jira software navigation.